Every day you fall for many psychological traps that influence your decisions and actions. And today, I'll expose 16 of those traps so you don't fall for them again. Number 16. Dunning-Kruger effect. This trap occurs when people with little knowledge or skill in a certain area believe they're more capable than they actually are. It's like thinking you're a great cook after watching a couple of cooking shows, even though you haven't practiced much. On the other hand, people who are truly skilled often realize how much they still don't know, so they tend to be more humble. The danger here is that overconfident beginners might make mistakes because they don't see their own limitations, while experts might doubt themselves too much. Number 15. Confirmation bias. This trap involves seeking only information that confirms your existing beliefs, opinions, or expectations. You might ignore or dismiss contradictory evidence, leading to a biased perspective. For example, a person who believes climate change is a hoax might only read articles that support their view, ignoring scientific evidence that contradicts it. This selective exposure solidifies their existing beliefs, making it difficult to change their mind. Number 14. Anchoring bias. This trap occurs when you rely too heavily on the first piece of information encountered, even if it's irrelevant or unreliable. This initial information anchors your subsequent judgments. Imagine you're in the market for a new watch. The first one you see is priced at $500. Suddenly, that price becomes your reference point, and everything else gets compared to it. Even if you later find a watch for $400, you might still think, wow, that's cheap, because your mind is anchored to that $500 price. Number 13. Availability heuristic. This trap occurs when your mind tends to judge how likely something is to happen based on how easily examples of it come to mind. Think about the last time you heard a story about a plane crash. It's a rare event, but because it's such a shocking and memorable story, you might start thinking that flying on a plane is more dangerous than it really is. This makes things seem more common just because it's easier to remember. Number 12. Hindsight bias. After something happens, have you ever caught yourself thinking, I knew that was going to happen? It's funny because, in reality, you might not have seen it coming at all. But once the event has passed, it feels like it was obvious all along. It's as if your brain rewrites history, making you believe that the outcome was predictable, even though it really wasn't. Number 11. Optimism bias. This trap makes you believe that good things are more likely to happen to you than bad things. For instance, you might start a new business and think it'll be an instant success, while not fully considering the challenges you might face. Optimism is great, but too much of it can lead you to ignore risks or not prepare for possible problems. This bias can cause you to be caught unprepared when things don't go as planned. Number 10. Self-serving bias. Have you ever noticed how, when things go well, you're quick to take credit, but when things don't go your way, it's easy to blame external factors? For example, if you ace a test, you might credit your intelligence and hard work, but if you fail, you might blame the teacher or the test questions, deflecting responsibility from yourself. Number 9. Framing effect. This trap occurs when you're influenced by the way information is presented, rather than the information itself. Imagine you're deciding whether to take a medication, and one doctor says, it has a 90% success rate, while another says, it fails in 1 out of 10 cases. Both are saying the same thing, but that first phrasing makes the medication sound more appealing, doesn't it? This way, your decisions can be changed, even though the facts haven't changed at all. Number 8. Gambler's fallacy. This trap is all about patterns that aren't really there. Let's say you're flipping a coin, and it lands on heads 5 times in a row. You might start thinking, it's got to land on tails next. But in reality, each flip is independent of the last, and the odds are always the same. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it's more likely to happen now. Your mind wants to see patterns, but sometimes randomness is just random. Number 7. Sunk cost fallacy. This happens when you keep investing time, money, or effort into something just because you have already invested a lot, even if it's no longer worth it. Picture this. You've been working on a project for weeks, but it's clear that it's going nowhere. Instead of cutting your losses and moving on, you think, I've already put so much time into this. I can't quit now. So you keep pouring more time, money, or effort into it, even though it's not worth it anymore. Number 6. Bandwagon effect. This trap involves doing something just because everyone else is doing it, even if it goes against your own judgment. Think about when a new restaurant opens in town and suddenly everyone you know is going there. Even if you weren't that interested at first, you might find yourself going too, just because everyone else is. It's easy to follow the crowd, assuming the crowd knows something you don't. Number 5. Halo effect. This is something we often do without even realizing it. Let's say you meet someone who's incredibly charming. That one positive trait might make you assume they're also smart, trustworthy, and kind. It's as if that one good quality casts a halo over everything else about them. But this can lead to overestimating people, giving them more credit than they might deserve, based on just one characteristic. Number 4. Illusion of control. This trap involves believing you have control over events that are actually random. Like when you're rolling dice in a game, and you believe that if you throw them just right, you'll get the number you need. But in reality, the outcome is random. This illusion makes us feel more in control than we actually are, which can lead to decisions based on a false sense of power. Number 3. Negativity bias. This trap involves focusing more on negative experiences than positive ones, even if the positives outweigh the negatives. Imagine you had a good day at work, but someone made one rude comment. You might find yourself focusing on that negative remark, even though the rest of your day was great. Our brains are wired to pay more attention to negative events because they can be threats, but this bias can make you feel more stressed or unhappy than you need to be. Number 2. Status quo bias. This trap occurs when you prefer to keep things the way they are, even when change could be beneficial. For example, you might stick with a job you don't enjoy because it's familiar, even though a better opportunity is available. This bias often leads to getting stagnated in your comfort zone, where you avoid taking risks or trying new things, because maintaining the status quo feels safer and less risky. Number 1. False consensus effect. This happens when you assume that most people think or feel the same way you do, even when they don't. For example, if you love a certain type of music, you might believe that most people also enjoy it, only to be surprised when they don't. This can lead to misunderstandings, especially in social situations, because you might expect others to agree with you or behave in the same way, when in reality, they might have different perspectives or preferences. By the way, just like these psychological traps, there are some dark psychological tricks that others might use to manipulate you. To avoid getting manipulated, we've revealed those tricks in this video.